The DC comic book universe is constantly changing and currently in chaos. What does that mean for its April solicitations? Here's 5 things that you really need to watch out for and that may give you a better idea what the future holds in store. What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is a weekly one-shot, the show where I go over comic book storylines, comic book news, anything really relating to comic books that are outside the normal part of a review, a preview, or something along those lines. So make sure you subscribe to get more of these every single week. Hopefully. So the one that I'm going to be talking about right now is the solicitations for DC Comics April 2019. So we're looking forward into the future. I'm going to give you 5 things that you need to watch out for. And the first thing that I'm going to be talking about is how the DC New Age of Heroes is no more. So the DC New Age of Heroes introduced 6 or 7 different titles that were going to be really captivating. They were meant to spin out of Dark Knight's metal, which was pioneered by Scott Snyder, and create this whole new line of artist-driven books. The biggest problem with DC's New Age of Heroes is that after the introduction of the first few issues, the superstar artists that were supposed to be on these titles, they just went someplace else and started doing other projects. And the writers were continuously there, for the most part, but they just didn't necessarily pick up the steam that they really wanted to. And with the cancellation of Damage number 16 inside April being the last issue, the only 2 that are remaining out of that entire swath of characters would be the Silencer as well as the Terrifics. And the Terrifics is easily the best comic book to come out of DC's New Age of Heroes. So the question is, how long is it going to be until those 2 comic books are no longer around? Or maybe the Terrifics is going to be the last man standing when it comes to these series. Another one that we're going to be talking about as far as cancellations, and that's the number 2 thing that you should be aware of, is that Rebirth is kind of running out of time. And I mean, Doomsday Clock is getting close to its end. It's been delayed, so people aren't even really caring about the storyline. A lot of people are going to want to read that again in its entirety, but the effects of Rebirth are no longer seen in most parts of the DC universe. The Justice League is overwhelmed by this entire Source Wall and DC Metals calamity. You've got Brian Michael Bendis writing his own goddamn shit over at Superman and Action Comics that may or may not have anything to do with what happened with DC Rebirth. And a lot of the titles that were originally out at Rebirth have either changed hands or are no longer even remotely relevant. And with the cancellation of Titans number 36, as well as the continued reduction in Hanna-Barbera titles that came out at the time of DC Rebirth, you can only wonder how relevant Rebirth is. And that's a really frustrating part, because Rebirth was really the savior for DC Comics when it came out. It was a huge moment, and everybody was so amped about what kind of good stories were being told in DC Rebirth. And to kind of throw that aside to move it in a general direction that may or may not win back fans isn't necessarily a great opportunity. So I'm wondering what's going to be going on with DC, but that is my number 2 thing. Number 3, what you need to check out, is Batman number 68 and number 69. And a lot of people don't necessarily like where Tom King's run's going, but this is the end of the Nightmare storyline. 68 and 69 are going to be getting Batman back into where he needs to be in order for 70 through 100 to go at the pace they need to go, because Tom King is, man, like, Batman is just, it's a totally different series than what you would have expected if you were reading in the beginning. It feels like it's changed its kind of course or main purpose throughout the time. If Tom King has had this plan the entire time, then maybe it was for a much shorter run of issues. But 68 and 69 are going to hopefully get us back to the Batman that we really appreciate, and then give us a little bit more heavy interest in this Bane storyline and how he's manipulating Batman from the sidelines behind the faces of all these different villains that are keeping Batman on his toes. So Batman, even though it might not necessarily be for everybody, always seems to be a can't-miss comic book. But speaking of Batman, in March we are going to get Detective Comics number 1000, which means that April is the home of Detective Comics 1001. So after this milestone event, what kind of storylines can we expect from Peter J. Tomasi, who took over Detective Comics a few issues ago and has been doing a pretty fantastic job? So the lead up, or really, instead of being like Superman and Action Comics, where essentially they took a really great storyline from Dan Jurgens and a really great storyline from Peter J. Tomasi, cut it short and put Brian Michael Bendis on a brand new number 1, this is going to continue to be Detective Comics 1001, 1002, 1003, with the same storyline that was going before, except he's introducing a character called Arkham Knight, which is going to be a brand new number 1. So I would say, well, It's not a brand new #1 issue. It's a first appearance of the character, so that makes it worth picking up on its own, but Peter J. Tomasi's writing is pretty stellar, so I would pick it up for that as well. To finish things off, the crisis of Heroes in Crisis is coming to an end. With the variant cover, we get confirmation that Harley Quinn was a patient at Sanctuary. She has suffered massive traumas, and we got that a little bit more inside issue #5. And then we also see this Mitch Gerard's cover, which has got Wally West on it, and I think he's going to be doing the interiors at some point in time as well. So it's just one of those stories where some people, it's just like absolutely ridiculously confusing. Some people, it is the best thing that I have ever read, and then for other people, it's just like, this is absolute fucking garbage. So you never know what kind of camp people end up in, but as for me, Heroes in Crisis is going to be a really good story to read all at once. And it's the first time I've really seen him do like a murder mystery as far as Tom King as a writer. Hopefully, it makes it easier when it's all collected together comparatively, because a lot of the clues seem relatively overt and a lot of the storyline seems to be treading water to try to get to important parts, and it's just not quite coming together the way that I would have thought it would. But I want to know what you guys think. What is the most important thing coming out of DC inside April of 2019? What does the future hold for DC Comics? Hit me up in the comments down below and we can start that conversation. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.